Welcome to the Road to Autonomy, the podcast shaping how Wall Street and industry executives think about the autonomy economy. For today's executives and investors, simply following the headlines is not enough. That's why our clients go beyond the podcast and the headlines to get exclusive market intelligence and industry briefings. See what they see. Visit roadtoautonomy.com. That's roadtoautonomy.com. Chuck, it's great to have you back on the Road to Autonomy. Every time there's big news, I get out my phone, I say 1-800-CALL-CHUCK, because you give really great analysis and insight into all things autonomous trucking from your decades of experience in this industry. And Chuck, we had big news this week. Bot Auto pulled the driver. And I want to say when they pulled the driver, Chuck, I want to say this for the audience, humanless. There wasn't a single soul, maybe an ant or two, but there wasn't a soul in the driver's cab. They did this in under 2 years and under raising $45 million on a 40-mile run. I've been in that truck, and I believe you have on the same run. Impressive. How the heck did they do this?
Well, and I will extend the no humans. They also didn't have a mission control with a remote driver, poised either. They were monitoring, of course, as I understand it, but there was no remote driver at all. So no humans involved in this event. And how they did it, you might look at it and say, come on, they've only been around 2 years and they only spent, $40 million. But you have to understand that this was the same core team that did the same project 4 years ago. This is the second time they've pulled the driver out on public highways. While the company's only been around for 2 years, that core team has been thinking about this problem for 8 years. And in the intervening years since they did it before, they've still been thinking about the approaches. And these are some of the best engineers in the industry. They're superstars. So they decided in that intervening time to use a new architecture that's better than what they did before. They did a clean slate approach, learning from their lessons from before. They have a better hardware plan, a more robust system, and importantly, they didn't have any OEM interference. When they decided to do this, they said, the last time we did it with OEMs involved, it slowed the process way down. They knew what they needed to do. They knew how to modify the trucks. They had already done it in the past. So they said, let's keep it extremely lean, only the best superstars on staff. It's a small, tightly integrated team. So they didn't have a bunch of departments doing different things. They all did it together in one room. And the result was stunning.
It's big news, and you highlighted OEM interference, and I want to highlight for the audience, because you come on every time there's big autonomous trucking news. The last time you were on, we had a whole conversation around PACCAR's no statement on Aurora's driver out. We saw they had to put a driver back. And the time before that, you were here when Waymo shut down Via. So you have a clear understanding on this, and you were on that original team. Does the OEM interference, this is a controversial question for you, is the OEM a hindrance or a help when it comes to scaling autonomous trucking?
It can actually be both, but if you're trying to move fast, there are a lot of headwinds involved in trying to get a major, highly conservative partner to be on the same page with you. There are contractual terms that you have to negotiate. There are processes you need to follow that are unrelated to making the system, inherently unrelated to making the system safer. It's the processes are more about getting a much larger organization to consensus. And that's very slow. Taking this approach, removing the OEM from the equation and going with a retail truck and just doing the modifications means that you don't have to go through those hurdles. You're not planning to sell these trucks. These trucks are being used by you in your own trucking as a service model. So it does make it far more efficient. That doesn't mean you're cutting any corners in terms of safety or engineering robustness. It just means you're not having to bring along 1,000+ member organization that doesn't have the same goals that you have, and has different priorities.
And I want to highlight and re-emphasize a point. Outside of the Zeekrs for Waymo, the Jaguars, which are currently the only ones available publicly on the road, those are upfitted, very similar to what Bot Auto did. And I also want to go back because there's a gentleman, and he's a friend, and he's a wonderful gentleman, and he gets a lot of crap. Is Don Burnett, the founder and CEO of Kodiak, or Mr. Burnett early on, you know this very well, said, we're going to build this. We're not going to be reliant on an OEM. To me, what Bot did and the way the market's reacting and the way that it's happening is a clear validation of Mr. Burnett's strategy, where build the product. And that's exactly, it seems, like what Bot did.
Yeah, and Kodiak is probably the only other company that took this lean approach. It did create, challenges that they had to wrestle with, but I think they've been quite successful in, picking a market, aggressively attacking it with a very lean team, and they did a good job. So that Permian Basin work that they're doing is great. So I think it does validate, an idea that Don had. I wasn't on the same page when I was doing this before, but looks like he's right, and Shouty's right with Bot.
And to highlight that, they're operating half a dozen trucks, no human there, in the Permian Basin, generating real revenue. So Kodiak has demonstrated from a commercialization standpoint that scaling without an OEM is possible, and you could build a revenue generating business on that. Bot has demonstrated they went 40 miles, and I want to highlight that there was service roads, highways, and also, as I'm going to put my little kid hat on, little roads, main roads that went right to the terminal. So Bot has achieved this 40-mile. It was a validation test, as they clearly stated in the release. Where do they go from here?
Yeah, so it was a sort of we'll call it a soup to nuts run. They started in a parking lot. They were launched, from a parking lot. They started on small surface streets. They went through a little bit of a neighborhood, so it was all the stuff that you might expect, in the full spectrum of driving. So it was a really good proof point that they had met their safety case. Now, I would argue personally that the word validation was probably a poor choice, because they weren't validating at that time. They were establishing a proof point. This is done. The validation happens on test tracks and happens under supervision, because during the validation, you're confident that it's going to work, but you're proving it out. They did all that, and then they wanted to publicly demonstrate that they had essentially completed validation. So this was really a completion statement rather than the validation itself. So this run, I wouldn't call this run a test run, because that implies they didn't know what the result was going to be. I like to call this a proof point, but that's why I'm not a marketing expert. That's probably not those words probably don't work well in the public, but I think it does. The words, either one, distinguishes it from a commercial launch, and the commercial launch is a future. That's in their near future, I think.
I think we can all agree, Chuck, that terminology in the autonomy economy is all over the map. It's alphabet soup.
Yeah.
There's no general consensus, or I'll use the term very loosely. There is no standard to what the terms mean. So I'm going to use, let's call it Chuck terminology. Proof point. Let's check the box. They completed the first proof point. What's the next proof point?
I think the next work they're going to need to be doing is opening up a first commercial lane. Now, to operate the truck commercially, that has a number of elements. They do have partners. While they didn't formally sign a contract with an OEM partner, they do have hardware partners. I'm sure they're collaborating closely with them to make sure that everyone is comfortable with going to a commercial operation, because things change when we're going commercial. Money's changing hands, and that that gets people's attention. So I don't know. I don't have an insider's view to know what that might look like, but I'm sure some of those things are going on in the background. They must be. But also, a real challenge is the logistics of opening a first run. It's not just how many miles are you driving. That's really the easy part. You map it out, you run it, it works. What's hard is the endpoints. You have to negotiate with your customer. Where are you going to pick up and drop off? Are those suitable routes? Is it possible to get into their lot? Or do you have to do a drop off, a hub type model? That's dependent. Bot has proven that they can do surface streets, so they aren't dependent on a hub, but it may turn out that the place they're picking up their trailers from is not really accessible or safely accessible. Maybe it's next to a school zone or a church or something, and they don't want to be operating in those kinds of areas. But if it's accessible, they have to work out, okay, how does the customer deal with the fact that there's a robot coming into their driveway? Do they have segregation of human traffic and automated? Those are details that take time. So, but they're not technology details, they're logistical details. So Bot has proven with their proof point that they have substantially de-risked the technology. So investors now who are looking at this should be looking at it with an eye towards, can they build the business? The technology is not completely de-risked, but it has now been shown to be greatly de-risked. So if you're a new investor investing in Bot, your money is not going to speculative innovation that hasn't been proven out. They've proven out the innovations. So now the bet is closer to, how are we developing, investment in developing the lanes and in starting the initial processes of scaling, building the business.
What goes into building an autonomous trucking business? Is it mastering the logistics? Is it mastering the technology? Is it getting the loads? What goes into that?
Yeah, it's all the above. And I believe they have good partners around getting loads. They've already signed one deal with Stevens that they've announced. They have, I'm sure they have other deals in the works that they'll be announcing. So there's plenty of business for them to take on. The work is, as I said before, in negotiating the routes, the timing, the entry, exit strategies. Those take time, but don't require millions of dollars to develop. They do need more trucks, but Xiaodi has done something that I think is masterful in this approach, and that is he is laser focused on the bottom line, where every other player so far has been focused on top line revenue. And so part of what he's investing in is getting that bottom line, met, so that he can actually build a profitable business, not just a money-losing, revenue-generating business.
What is owning and operating the service? That's what Bot's clearly publicly stated they're going to do. What does that unlock from an economic business model standpoint?
It reduces the resistance to getting these trucks on the road with some level of scale. If you decide that your business is to build the technology and then sell the trucks to others for them to operate, there's a lot more process involved in getting the acquiring companies trained in how to operate autonomy and aligning with their particular businesses. Starting the business by saying, we're just going to do it and we're going to do it profitably, says that opens the door for them to move more quickly to establish how it is done as a revenue generating and profit creating business, becoming an efficient operation. And then once they've done that, perhaps they have opportunities then to open other doors, to bring in an OEM, to turn this into a product that other fleets could also acquire. I think that is also on their long-term roadmap, that it's not just about them building a fleet, although they could do that. If they can make that profitable, they can do that and self-fund, with that fleet for years. And then, if they see an opportunity, open it up for other fleets to buy in.
You said something to me that stood out. It's a lot of stuff to unpack there, but you said bring in an OEM. That's 15 minutes ago. We're talking about the advantage he has. Is that bring an OEM now because it's a level playing field, or why would you explore bringing it in now?
I think you do it later. I think you do it after the technology is 100%, established and proven in the market to be able to make money. It's not enough to be in the market to make revenue, because anybody can burn revenue. Our friends at Aurora announced publicly that they spent $5 for every dollar they earned in revenue. That's not a business. If you reach a point where you can say this can be done profitably, that's going to get the attention of fleets, and those fleets are going to then be asking the OEMs to consider building these trucks, from the factory so that they can buy them. At that point, it might make economic sense for BOT to talk to an OEM and say, okay, we have a stable, profitable technology. If you're ready to build this in a factory, as opposed to us doing the upfit ourselves, we'd be happy to work with you. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but that certainly is a potential future. It brings in the OEM at a time when both players are ready, as opposed to spending a lot of time having to prove to an OEM that this might work in the future.
This is Monday morning quarterback or 2020 hindsight. Do you think, and you have experienced this going back to Peloton, do you think that autonomous trucking companies in general, not particular anyone in particular, in general, rush too fast to get an OEM deal instead of building out the business case, building out technology, and validating it? So I'll use a poker term so they can have a better hand of cards.
Yeah, I think we were all pretty naive and thought that signing an OEM would secure a better future for the technology. In the end, OEMs are very efficient at assembling trucks. It turns out, for the most part, they aren't that efficient in innovating. That's not their business. Their business is to build very stable, highly reliable vehicle systems that require a minimum of field support. Truck fleets measure OEMs on how reliable the vehicles are, how few times the vehicles have to pull over on the side of the road because they couldn't complete a mission. So OEMs are rightly very conservative when it comes to new technology. We didn't anticipate that when we were signing OEM deals, and didn't anticipate how difficult it would be to move an OEM to a very significant new technology in such a way that they could continue to meet their reliability metrics. So I think we all, had to deal with that in a variety of ways.
So let me put it to you this way. If you look at the pass car side, which I have a lot of experience on the robotaxi pass car side, there's an emerging trend that's been emerging for a few years. One, OEMs are not very good at building an autonomous driving stack, or when they acquire a company, let's look at Argo with the Ford and VW, they shut it down. They're not very good at integrating it and building it. And now they're looking at, you're seeing the emergence of the licensing model where you have the Neuro Uber deal that's been licensed. And now you're starting to see the emergence of contract manufacturers because Foxconn has purchased a Nissan plant in Japan. Do we get to the point in trucking where similar trends emerge where any autonomous trucking company, let's say, goes to Acme Truck OEM, says, okay, I need 1,000 trucks, and they build them for him with no strings attached, and it starts to open up this contract manufacturing? Because in my opinion, when you get contract manufacturing, you can scale a lot faster without the restraints. Could you imagine? You're good at this. You live in the valley. Could you imagine if Apple had all the restraints on the iPhone that the autonomous trucking companies have? What you can and can't do? We wouldn't be having an iPhone today. So does that open up contract manufacturing?
It's possible. The OEMs are incredibly efficient at manufacturing. They have long established supply chain relationships that are hard to build up. But if you get a company, you can get a Foxconn type company who also does that well, there's a possibility that this could create competition for the legacy OEMs. And I have to say, all of what I'm saying about the OEMs is not to disparage them. They have a mission, and it's an important one. And they're very good at building highly efficient vehicles that meet all the regulatory approval, processes, that have highly reliable supply chains, that will have parts availability, for 10 years after the truck is launched or more. So they do a great job, but their mission, it turns out, is different from the mission of an innovator in technology. And it may be the case that a contract manufacturer like Foxconn may be more aligned with an innovator, and that may create future competition for the legacy suppliers. But I think time will tell on that.
I read an interesting book a few months back, Gambling Man. It was a biography of Masa Sons, written by Lionel Barber, the former editor of the Financial Times. And if you read that book, I'm about to say to you, you won't think it's so crazy. So I'm going to tell you, read the book if you want to laugh at what I'm about to ask Chuck here. Masa controls Stack AV, Brian Selesky's new startup, Stack AV, the autonomous truck company, which they are on a media blackout since day one. There's nothing to analyze. There's nothing to discuss. It's on a complete media blackout. Does Masa wake up one day, and this just happened, by the way, this was well documented in the WeWork stuff, and say, you know what? I don't want to deal with an OEM anymore. Masa's going to go buy a contract manufacturer. Let's go Stack. And if that happens, it seems to me the entire economics change. The cost per mile goes from here to here. What do you think about that scenario? It's plausible. I know it's out there, but if you read the book, you'll understand it's plausible.
Of course, it's plausible. If he's one of those who has the resources to do such a thing. Masa-san, Musk, these people can make radical change and cause that to ripple through the industry and change the industry. We've already seen that with Tesla and Elon's approach. Masa-san could do the same thing. Would marrying a contract manufacturer with a stack developer of any stripe, whether it's Stack AI or Bot or anyone else, would that change how they? Would it change their pace? Would it change their cost? I don't know. Yes, you could potentially bring costs down, but there's a lot that happens in building a truck that you're going to sell to others. And I think that's a key distinction between, what some of the others are doing and what Bot is doing. And I don't know what Stack wants to do. And I don't know what Masa-san wants to do with Stack. So I think the jury is out. I think we could get surprised again. Bots was a huge, very positive surprise, and I use huge. I on LinkedIn I said huge when I posted about it. And I used that word for a reason. It's huge because by doing what they did, they established that they have proved their safety case, which is one of the hardest things to do in developing an autonomous vehicle. They secured regulatory approval. That is hard and important, of course. So all of the regulators, federal and state, knew about this and approved it. That's hard. They lapped their competition. Xiaodi was the first to do it 4 years ago, long before any of the competition did it. And now he's done it again. So he's now twice gone driver out, gone through this process. So he has proven without a doubt that this team can do this repeatedly. And he did it with so much less money, so much less resource. This is going to have ripple effects through the industry, because I can guarantee you investors are looking right now at their investments and going to the leaders of the other companies and saying, why have I invested so much money and gotten so little in all this time when this upstart has come out and done it with less than $100 million. In fact, less than $50 million. Others are spending $600 million a year or more and not delivering.
What are the ripple effects? Is it having to do technology overhaul? Or I'll give you an example. This is a very interesting example. I'm going back in Chuck history here. So, sorry, Chuck, I got to go back in Chuck history because you have experience with this. And there's a great story about this. You were at Oracle. And for years, Oracle was just viewed as the database company. You know, they do hospitality software. They just do big databases. And then Mr. Ellison, he said, oh, he rode that AI train. And boy, oh boy, we saw what that's done to Oracle. It's completely changed the company. There's one of these older companies that are, I say older than bot. And this industry, as you know, is very young. Do they start to pull Larry Ellison and start to shift the company towards newer technology? And what are the ripple effects you see that are coming?
Yeah, I think we will see some consideration of the current approach. I suspect investors and boards are today asking questions. You know, why are you continuing this approach? This approach is not bearing fruit in the, you know, at the pace we need. Why are you building up so much, you know, digging such a deep hole? I mean, if you're spending billions and have no path to profitability in any foreseeable future, all you have is a path to revenue. You know, scaling a business that is by process, losing money hand over fist with every mile you drive, that's not a business. And investors will see that. And, you know, one thing, so I'm not keen on sharing private conversations with individuals, but it sank in deeply to me when Xiaodi talked about bottom line is all that matters. Cost per mile. You have to be able to deliver at a cost that justifies doing the work for profit. And he's on a path to do that. And he's focused on that. And he's the first one that I've heard say that. And I think as a result, he is going to raise money. But one of the things that he's also said is all the money he raises from investors goes to research and development, not to running the operational business. And I think that's important. If you're an investor, you don't want your money going to the $4 it takes to raise $1 in revenue. That's dumb investing. So he has no intention of doing that. He intends the money only to go to the technology portion of it and what it costs to get to the point of doing that commercially. He intends to use other means that aren't tapping investors to to fund the operational business, and then he intends to, to pay that back with profits. So it's an incredibly refreshing take on how to do an autonomous business, and he's the only one that said this.
Is this able to achieve because of the model where he's going to own and operate the fleet? Is that how Bot's going to be able to unlock this? Is this a different model that's currently out there in the market?
Yes. If you sort of go under the covers a bit, it's not just the technology, it's also all of the processes around running a fleet business. He's integrated AI approaches to everything, the logistics side as well. So there's innovation that is not yet being shown. It was demonstrated in the run, but they didn't talk about every, they didn't publicly talk about every aspect of what they were doing. But there's a lot more under the covers in their model that reduces costs. Their dispatch reliability is surprisingly high. It's unlike other autonomous fleets that I've been able to see, including my previous one. Dispatch reliability is a huge cost, and with autonomy, it's hard to get high because you're developing technology. But Xiaodi's numbers, as revealed to me, and I won't share the actual numbers, they're stunning. They're in line with commercial fleets using production trucks. And that's shocking at this stage to be that good.
Are we seeing at Bot Auto what we're seeing in the public markets with some of the largest companies in the world, where AI is the great cost savings unlock?
AI is a big unlock. He is using a Gen AI, a foundational AI approach. It is not, I would say, it is not just pure, show it a bunch of pictures and teach it to drive. There is more depth to it than that, and a lot of sort of redundancy in the software and self-supervision, self-diagnosis that's also at play in this system. So, and that's required when you're building a safety technology. So yes, it is the big unlock. They're able to move very quickly, both in their development processes, which are very heavily AI driven now, and the operational system.
Is it an end-to-end system?
Yeah, you would, and Xiaodi's talked about this. It is an end-to-end, mostly AI. I think, if you dive into the details, it might not be 100% pure end-to-end when you look at some of the diagnostics and other stuff that goes on. There's certainly some discrete programming in that, but it is essentially an end-to-end AI approach.
So AI is allowing Bot to accelerate the business faster, the technology faster. So let's get down to brass tacks. You have a 40-mile proof point, as you called it, with humanless, no human in the cab. How do you get from, say, a Houston to San Antonio run? That's 273 miles, about 4 hours and 10 minutes with no traffic. How do you get to that proof point? And does that become proof point number 2? And if it is, what's proof point 3?
So proof point 2 then is building the first commercial ready lane. And as I said before, that requires negotiating with the customers. Where are you going to pick up and drop off? What's the timing? You can do it daytime, nighttime. What frequency can you do? That's a big part. Another part is, of course, mapping the lane and making sure you can do that. But Bot has gotten that down to a science. They can do that very quickly. Their ODD is quite broad. They're handling construction. They handle night. They handle weather, and they've already demonstrated that. So, it's as much as anything, it's a matter of resource. Getting the trucks on the road. There are costs involved, and logistics. I think largely the tech part of it is solved, but they've got to map the lane. They've got to do some verification runs with safety drivers, and they've got to negotiate with the customers.
So with proof point 2, are we looking at 12 months, 24 months, 36 months? When do you think they'll be able to achieve realistically proof point 2?
Oh, I couldn't, I don't have insight into their schedule, but I think it's months. I think it's months. It's not a year, I think. It's my personal belief.
Wow. So okay, so that's a shocker to me. That's aggressive. I like this, Chuck. You're on fire today, buddy. Okay, so let's say we'll stick to your timeline of months for proof point 2. Now, what's proof point 3? Is that commercial true commercialization, or is that something else?
I think they're probably going to want to open more than one lane to prove that it's not just a one-off, and to establish, confidence with their customers. So I would guess they do a lane and then they do an additional lane. And in the meantime, there are the details that they have to work through, on the technology side with their suppliers to make sure that the suppliers, and there are some key suppliers, even though they haven't signed with an OEM, they have key suppliers that I'm sure have their own, requirements before they do it commercially. And it's always the case when you're talking with any of your partners that there's a difference between development stage and commercial operational stage. When money starts changing hands, liabilities start, developing, and they want to make sure that they're right before they say yes. And that's mostly business and risk mitigation, and perhaps even, if they're generating revenue, there may be some money exchange with partners kinds of discussions as well. Although I have no insight into any of that. I just know that that's sort of what happens behind the scenes. One of their suppliers may say, well, we want a penny per mile, if we're going to be a part of this. Well, maybe they'll get a penny per mile, or not. Maybe none of that's going on. But I think that's part of the hitting, flipping the switch and saying this is now commercial.
Is there even enough room in the margin to support a penny per mile? What type of numbers are we looking at to put that into perspective?
I'm not trying to open a can of worms there. So I don't know if even such a negotiation is happening. I'm just saying, in theory, I could imagine a partner who's supplying something to the vehicle saying, hey, I should get a piece of this too. I would imagine Xiaodi is trying his best to bat down things like that because he's laser focused on cost per mile, and he doesn't want any tax that he can avoid on that.
Do you know another individual who's laser focused on cost? Always has been. He gets beat up all the time for it. Elon Musk. And Chuck, I don't want to say what froze over this week. We had a press release from Uber. The Tesla Semi will be available on Uber Freight. That gives it a clear path to scale. You and I both know at some point FSD Supervised will be available on Semi. And at some point in the future, FSD Unsupervised will be available. Uber Freight's giving them a lot of freight to haul. Should we, from an autonomous trucking standpoint, not overlook this press release because based on who's running the show, based on the ability to scale and manufacture? Yes, I know it's complexities, but Tesla's got manufacturing down pretty good now.
Tesla, you're absolutely right. Elon is cost. I shouldn't say Xiaodi is the only one. Elon is the other one, and to a degree, Don as well at Kodiak. But I think the big differentiator between Elon's approach with the Semi and a company like Bot is that Bot's doing it on diesel trucks, which have much longer range. So the kind of moves that you'll be able to do with a Semi will, of course, be limited in the near term by range. I think Elon's going to work through that and have solutions for that some of which will probably be, as is his want, highly innovative and surprising. So I can imagine, intermediate charging stops where trailers are automatically exchanged somehow between trucks while one goes off to charge and the other continues to minimize the delay the dwell while you're going to a charger. Who knows? So I never bet against Elon is my first rule. I always like to bet with Elon. I do think that the market is a little different between long haul diesel trucks that are autonomous and shorter haul electric trucks, which is still going to have a great business, and it's going to scale. Probably, once he gets to the point where this is autonomous, his ability to scale is already established. He can build these trucks, and he can build them cheaply. So I'd say he is and always is the competition. Whenever you're doing something autonomous, he's the competition.
What happens when he turns on FSD supervised in semi? How does the industry react?
I'm not sure that's going to be a large effect if it's supervised. I think drivers will appreciate it. It should reduce accidents, but it's not going to reduce costs because the driver is still present. So this logistics industry is driven by costs. So what's going to flip the switch for this industry is when he goes unsupervised. And that's going to be huge, just as it is, with bot. So I think it will have an effect. I think drivers will appreciate it. It might attract drivers to driving the semi, but I don't think it will be the industry changing event. I'm looking forward to seeing it, though.
It'd be great. So when I'm going to parallel this now with the car side. When Tesla Semi begins testing FSD supervised, and then they lay out a plan to go to unsupervised, just like you and I see on the car side, you have the pro Tesla people, the I want nothing to do with the people, and the people in the middle. Do we see the same thing happen on the truck side that we're seeing on cars, where, if you want to call it, there's a great divide?
You mean in terms of opinion?
In terms of opinion, because there's individuals on the car side. It's never going to work. It's never going. You and I know, we test it all the time. It works. End of the day.
Yeah, of course there will be. I mean, this will go on forever. There are certain institutional players who don't want to see this and are fighting in some cases irrationally against this. I won't name them, but you can imagine who they are. They have large power, organizations that are deeply tied into the government that don't want to see this happen. But it's going to happen. And it will, it will certainly change the industry. I think for the better. But, time will tell how these players, continue to react.
Putting this whole conversation, which is, I love having you on here when there's big news to talk about, because you give honest opinion and really great analysis on. So putting this all together, what are your current thoughts on the current state of the autonomous trucking industry? Do you feel it's healthy? It's growing? What are your thoughts on the current state of the industry?
Well, I think we're now seeing glimmers of proof that the technology is reaching a level of maturation that means we're going to see commercial operations in trucking. We're also seeing glimmers of this in cars. I think that is healthy. That means we're actually making tangible progress. What I think is less than healthy are, some of the players who are operating with, one might say dinosaur stacks that need to rethink what they're doing, and they need to make real changes to move the ball forward. And can they survive such a thing? There are massive investments that have gone into these companies. At some level, an investor might say it's too big to fail, so I'm going to push them to, making a change. Others might say, these guys aren't getting it done, and I'm walking away from it and investing elsewhere, because the industry is going to happen. This is now, I think, it's mature enough that with confidence I can say autonomy is going to happen, and it's going to happen in the near term. Those investors who are, wanting to be a part of it, now they have to ask, am I investing in the right play? Do I need to move to a different play? Or other investors who've been waiting, sitting on the sidelines, maybe now's the time to strike.
Bob Dylan once famously saying, Chuck, the times, they are a-changing. The autonomous trucking industry is changing as Bot Auto has proved that you can take the power of AI and make a truck successfully drive itself with no human. Now, the next step for Bot is to prove and to validate, you just have to use that word, to validate to the market that they can scale it on multiple lanes in multiple routes. And when they do it, we're going to have them here on the podcast. And you know what's going to happen, Chuck? You're going to come back as the in-house autonomous trucking analyst to break it down for us. What do we need to look for in the autonomous trucking market, Chuck, as we look to wrap up until you come back next? What are the key things the audience needs to look for?
Well, I think takeaways from what's happened, I think what BOT did is a watershed event. They have demonstrated that you can do much more with much less and have a big accomplishment. They've proven that commercialization is within reach. And this is going to have, I think, significant impact on how investors view this market. It's both positive, especially for the innovators who are advancing the ball, and it's going to be negative for those who have been sort of dragging their feet. In BOT's case, they've shown that if you lean forward with the most advanced, most efficient technologies, and you focus on the bottom line instead of the top line in how you're sort of moving your business forward, then you can have a success far beyond what people thought. So I'm very bullish on the future given this development.
I'm bullish on the future because we're on the road to autonomy. I would say embrace AI, build the future. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is autonomous trucking. Chuck, as always, sir, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Thanks for having me.